And now to moderate our panel, please welcome back Secretary of the Smithsonian, David J. Skorton.
Well, can we hear it one more time for the panelists with great presentations? Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. You can just imagine what an interesting set of meetings we had. This is just a small sampling of the overall committee that Tom and Ashley put together. When I first got to know the committee, I thought that was a great combination of wisdom and a good sense of humor, putting us all in the same room. And over the course of nearly 2 years, we did have a chance to learn a lot from each other. And I say this with all sincerity and authenticity. I learned enormous amounts from these folks, and you've seen a carefully selected, but I think my colleagues would agree, small sample of the creativity, stubbornness, and different ways of looking at the world that we experienced. So in about 7 weeks or so, this study will come out. And before moderating the panel and asking you to participate with us, we wanted to get a feel a little bit of your backgrounds. And we've had a chance, all of us, to meet various individuals in the group. But if we can see by a show of hands, how many of you are currently in academic positions, that is, faculty members? Okay, thank you. How many of you are in the creative or performing arts as your main gig? Okay. How many stumbled into the wrong room this morning? You can be honest with us. Okay, there's somebody, that's great. And how many are not described by either academic or performing or creative arts disciplines? Okay. And can you tell us, just not counting Jill Sackler, just give us just a one or two word.
I'm Margot Knight. I'm the Executive Director of Jurassic Resident Artist Program, a kind of incubator R&D space for artists.
We're very jealous about that. Over here? Okay, others?
I'm an astronomer who makes movies.
Wonderful.
I'm a journalist working with astronomers.
Who make movies? Okay. Okay. Others? Yes, over there. And farther back? Yes.
A business owner of a production company.
Fantastic. Anybody else? Yes, please.
National Science Foundation and visualizations in my portfolio. Data science, visualization, information technology.
How fascinating. Yes.
Well, I am a designer artist. However, I'm also creative director of intermediate projects and nonprofit, which is dedicated to promoting arts and
Thank you very much. Anyone else that I missed? Yes, please, way back there.
Informal STEM learning spaces writ large, museums included.
Thank you. Well, Tom, isn't it interesting? This audience is a macro version of our committee, just defying categorization or description. So I'm going to take the prerogative of asking my colleagues some questions that I struggle with, and perhaps our audience has been, Young Mu, very patient so far. Perhaps after a few more minutes of us talking, we can open it up if that's okay. So in no special order, and you don't each have to answer this question, but I'm just curious, do you think at the end of the process we answered the statement of task that was given to us, and that is to understand the evidence supporting the assertion, as Lori was saying, that integration of these different disciplines improves student learning outcomes and employment outcomes? Anyone want to bite on that one? Do you think we succeeded in that statement of task or not? You can see the answer is they're not quite sure, but go ahead, Tom.
Well, I don't know yet, because here's the real test for me. We've been talking a lot about integration, STEM, arts, humanities, but actually, and I'm sorry to say this, a lot of it is about money. And here's what I mean. One of the reasons we started this is so that for those of you who are advocates of integration, you can go to your dean or your provost and say, here's the evidence that if you have $100,000 in spare change lying around, I can use it more effectively than the department chair who wants to hire a new star faculty member. I can use it more effectively than those who are advocating for a new building. And if the dean could say, I'm willing to consider it, where's the evidence that this is going to help students prepare for life and work? Let me see it. So if after a few years people take our report and wave it around and slam it on the table even if they don't read it, but it's used as a way to tell the story that it's worth investing money in the integration of these programs, then we probably will have done an effective job of answering that question.
I'm personally so hurt by the thing you just said, even if they don't read it. Let me just say, if I may, on behalf of my colleagues, this report reads like a Faulkner novel. That is to say, long sentences, complex thoughts, and it's completely and totally engaging. We fully expect not only will you read it, but you will take it to heart and share it with your families and friends. Any other thoughts about whether we succeeded?
I would like to speak, to the evidence piece. So one of the things we did, and with your help, was we sent out a Dear Colleague letter, and then we followed up personally, each one of us on the committee. And I think what we have is a really interesting, rich body of material to share back to you. And one of the things, I think examples point the way towards action, even as things are, culture is very local. And yet I think, as we've seen, there are some trends that we can tap into. And what counts for evidence continues to be kind of very squirrely. But I think what this does, in the appendices, you will see some really interesting compilations of examples that can be pulled from. So I think that's one thing we did get to. And then I just wanted to say, the thread I forgot, it's about workforce preparedness, but it's also about engaged citizenry, right? We forget. And it's so ironic. Yesterday I was on the Hill, and I actually the day before for Arts Advocacy Day, and I went to 10 different House and Senate offices, and it was packed with students. It was just packed. And I think we have a bright future ahead, and I think this report points to those high points and directions we can take, as Tom said, to activate our own networks for social change.
What a beautiful way to put it. By the way, I want, Ben, I want the record to show that it was Lori, not me, who used the word squirrely and Capitol Hill in the same paragraph. Pamela, you had something.
Yeah, sure. I feel that the process, the sessions that we had with the invited guests, as well as our own deliberations on the committee, and the pending report contribute to a conversation, discussion that has been going on for quite a while. And I think most of us have been involved in this conversation at various kind of touch points, I would say over the past decade, maybe the past 2 decades, or at least decade and a half almost. And I think that contribution, that conversation is very important, especially from the level of the National Academy of Sciences, and recognizing the importance of that conversation. I think it was really interesting with the projects, Lori, that you listed and described, to see how many things are starting to happen on campuses and elsewhere that are on their own going forth and saying that this integration is really important, not only for creativity, expressiveness, innovation, but also inclusiveness and diversity of participation in education. And it seems like there's a top-down and a bottom-up process, and from the ground up, this is happening. Right, and I think we unearthed a lot of places where there's various classes and courses and curriculum and centers that this is happening. But from the top down, there have been like stops and starts at it, and like a little kind of like support of it. I think of the program that I ran when I was at the National Science Foundation, Creative IT, which looked at funding research that was connecting creativity, creative cognition, computer science, engineering, and learning sciences. And that was, I think, a very important program and touch point. And I think some of what we set forth in Creative IT still continues on at the National Science Foundation, if you know where to find it. But as its own initiative, it's no longer there. It wasn't intended to be there forever, but it's not there. But there was such an incredible community of people knocking at the door, not only to try to find funding, but to be part of that conversation. And we can see that this is a community that exists and that we need to figure out how to better support it. Yeah.
Sorry, Youngmoo, just to think about the comments that Lori made touching on social justice, as well as Pamela's thinking about and recognizing and pointing out to us, reminding us about the bottoms up, the grassroots, as well as the top down. I must say that I left without touching on the details of the report, I left the process of studying, listening, and collaborating much more optimistic about both those things. That there's interest in this, a groundswell, regardless of what the study actually comes out to say and what people's reactions, that there's a groundswell of interest in this, in some part due to social justice concerns. So that's an important point to make. So thank you, both of you. Youngmoo?
I just wanted to add in, I mean, of course I learned so much through this work and serving on this committee. There is much more activity than I think most of us were aware. I mean, we all know of the networks that we run in and those sorts of new centers, new institutes, new programs, that sort of thing. But there was much more, I think, than we realized. But as far as sort of meeting the charge of the committee, I think it's, it will always be a work in progress. That this is sort of a milestone to bring some focus onto this. But, and this is looking at higher education. For many of us, that means a four-year college or a research university. But as was pointed out many times, and we had a committee member as well to represent community colleges, which serve so much larger population than those who attend four-year institutions or go on to graduate work, and then even more so that less than half of the adult population of the U.S. attends, is involved with higher education. So. When we're thinking about the potential impact, and there's tremendous optimism around this, I think that I was even more optimistic that this might have an impact beyond higher education.
So we're going to open it up now to a dialogue we'd like to have with you, and we're putting you in a sort of a difficult situation as a group of colleagues because you haven't seen the report yet. We can't actually tell you about it. It's not quite done yet. But yet, I hope you understand from the beautiful presentations that you heard this morning from these colleagues, sort of where we're coming from and where the Board on Higher Education and Workforce was coming from in assigning this.